Well, I have a long, crazy story, but they all weave together eventually. So, in high school, I found out that I was pretty talented at computers and making websites. And that's not too impressive now, but in the late 90s, that was a lot harder to do and required coding and on the back end. But I didn't want to be a computer nerd. I wanted to be cool and be on the radio. So, instead of doing that after college, I went into radio broadcasting and was on the top 40 station here in Kansas City called Mix 93.3. And
Wow.
I was Romeo on radio and DJ'd in bars and clubs and weddings and all that kind of stuff throughout my 20s. But I also built the websites for the radio stations. And so behind the scenes, I was doing their social media accounts and websites for the Kansas City Chiefs and their radio network, and about 6 other radio stations and a charity website as well. So there were like 8 websites that I was running while doing the on air and like prize guy
Wow.
stuff too. So very busy and very fun early in my career. But my dad is a Sandler trainer. So he teaches sales training, and he had kind of started that when I was in high school too. So I took sales training on and off, but it didn't really work as a career. I didn't feel like in my 20s I could go to a business owner and be like, hey, here's what you should do with your sales team. So instead, I went in and said, hey, here's what you should do with your internet marketing. And it took me until I was about 30 years old to be like, oh, you idiot. It's the same thing. You have an expertise that business
Hmm.
owners don't have, and you could help them with that. So I moved to work with my dad and did that for 5 years in sales training. And then I moved to Sandler Corporate, which is where I am now. And I get to combine all 3 of those things. So I host the podcasts and webinars for Sandler, and I get to do my entertainment shtick. I'll be on stage for the next 2 days for
Wow.
Sandler, and
Congrats.
yeah, thanks. And I get to have a ton of fun with that. But also, I help do their internet marketing, and my
Hmm.
official title now is Director of Community Engagement, which means I just try to get people talking to each other and have a communications role between our strategic partners, our clients, and then our 400 trainers that we have around the
Wow.
world
Wow,
too.
that's so cool.
And I get to do all 3. I get to do the sales background, the technology background, and the broadcasting all at the same time.
Wow, well that's the way to go. Get everything that you like all in one job. I think that is the coolest thing I've
Yeah.
ever heard.
Well, I'll give you a hint because I know you're starting your career too. But if you only pick one job, they only pay you for one job. But if you have 3 jobs, you can make 3 times the money because nobody else has that skill set. Like, how
Yeah.
many DJ, web designer, sales trainers do you know? Um,
One. You.
right. And who knows what that person makes? I could,
Hmm.
give you some hints,
Yeah.
but it's about 6 times what I made as a radio DJ. So it's very
Wow,
good.
that's awesome. Wow, that
It's
is so
also
cool.
very poor radio to make be 6 times even, possible. You had to start pretty low.
Well, I think that's cool either way. To me, I don't
Yeah,
really
it's
have a
fun.
concept of that, but I'm
Yeah.
definitely a person who likes to be kind of talking. I love radios. It was like a fun thing. It wasn't a huge dream, but I definitely had that for like a good year or two when I was like, I want to say like 9. I loved that idea. I was like, either I'm gonna be like an actor on TV or I'm gonna be like on radio. I don't know why, but I think that is cool, and I kind of have this, so I guess you
I
could
think
say I'm
that's
kind of
awesome. You'd
living
be
that
great
out.
at it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Podcasting is where it landed for me because once the world kind of changed, there's not people picking radio DJs and TV stars anymore. You kind of have
Yeah.
to make your own audience, which is more fun. My How to Succeed podcast, How to Succeed, has had over 2 million downloads, and
Wow.
it's about 4,000 an episode. We've been going for 6 years now.
Dang.
So like that is cool for me. I get to have my own audience and do whatever show I want. And it's a lot more fun than working for somebody else and reading off a sheet of paper, which is kind of what radio is these days,
Yeah, definitely.
unfortunately.
Yeah, being in charge of yourself and your content, I think, is very important. And I think a lot of people are starting to realize that they'd rather be in charge of themselves and what they put out and what they do and how they talk to their audience rather than kind of just going through the industry and like having all these managers tell you what to do and like what to read and what you can promote and stuff. So I think a lot of people are going through that. And it's so easy nowadays with social media to kind of pick that up on your own.
Yeah, and take charge of your career and your audience too, because when you do it for somebody else, they can just, it happened to me in radio one time. They came in at 10 o'clock and said, "Hey, everybody, at noon, we're playing country music and you're all fired." And you're like, "Oh, well, that's fun." Like, that's so even I think people think working for somebody else has better job security and better income, but I found the opposite to be
Yeah,
true, that it's better
definitely.
security to have your own audience and your own career going independently of any one job.
Yeah, definitely. Do you have any tips for people kind of starting up that podcast? Again, I was saying that like a lot of people are starting to want to go down that route, especially kind of in the world that we are now. Do you have any tips for how they run it, how they talk, how they promote it, anything like that?
I have a whole ton, but I would basically say start and don't stop, and you'll figure out the rest of it. So once you start publishing stuff, you'll see what people like and don't like. You'll get better at it. You'll get better, figure out graphics and where to put it and
Yeah.
what promotions work and how to get guests. But the big thing is just to hit record and then to hit publish afterwards. And once you get it out there, the rest of it comes over time. And it's disappointing at first when you see there's like 10 downloads or 100 people listened, but
Mm-hmm.
if you keep your time investment relatively short on those, spending 30 minutes to an hour to speak to 10 or 100 people is probably worth your time. And so
Definitely.
once you repeat that and as many repetitions as you can get, if you could do a daily podcast, that's awesome if you have the bandwidth, or at least weekly, so that you get there faster the more
Definitely.
that you do it. But
Yeah.
after 100 shows, you'll figure it out and you'll have a good audience. It'll be fun.
Yeah. I had a previous project before this of I talked to about 100 people, just about 10 minutes is a lot shorter than this, about what they say to the younger self. And I think you're so right. I haven't really published all of them yet, but as
Yeah.
I was going through the podcast, I was learning more and more on how to like better interact, how to better interview people, ask questions. And by like, I guess 50th person, you could say like, oh, okay, I kind of understand. But it took a while, and it definitely wasn't overnight. And I definitely had to keep on going, even though it was kind of
Yeah.
hard and uncomfortable.
And I think, especially for young people or anybody trying to build an audience or a reputation, that takes a while and it's hard work. People don't just, blow up. And I've even had a lot of friends that have had viral videos and stuff online, and that still doesn't help you because they
Yeah,
watch that one video, but that doesn't mean they're subscribers or that they want to pay you money for anything or anything else. So it's like, oh,
definitely.
great, I had a video that got 10 million views, but now nothing happens from that. I made zero money, and a few people know me, but not really
Yeah,
in a way that makes sense. So you still have to kind of figure out what you're selling, how to make it profitable, and figure out how to get that audience of fans that really like know, like, and trust you in a way that that they're willing to pay attention to everything you do.
yeah, definitely. Building that strong base is not going to be overnight. It's going to take a little bit of time. You kind of have to be like, okay, I'm in for the long haul. I might only get one subscriber today and one subscriber tomorrow. But if I just only get one and then I do it for 100 days, that's 100 people, 100 subscribers. And then they know
Right.
people. So yeah, it really kind of grows. You have to kind of stick to be like, okay, it's really slow right now, but I can get it if I keep on going.
And it goes exponential too. It's not like you add one subscriber a day. It's you might
Mm-hmm.
add one subscriber a day for the first 90 days, but then you add 10 a
Yeah,
day for the next ones. And once you get to 1,000, then it's a lot easier to publish something good and have 1,000 people share it and stuff. So it grows exponentially, but you just have to know that that means that's a really slow start and then a really high climb later.
yeah, definitely. We kind of talked about a little bit about you, and you definitely know a lot of stuff. You've been through a lot of different cool jobs that I think are so cool, especially kind of working with your dad. I've worked with my dad my whole life, so I definitely understand like that kind of like, your dad's kind of the boss of you. I'm not sure if he was yours, but he was definitely mine, and he still
Yeah.
definitely is. Um, but I have a question, kind of switching gears. If you had to go back, kind of turn the time, and knowing what you know now, what do you think that you kind of would have done differently, or what you think people should do in the first 30 days of kind of starting their own business to really get themselves up there? I know we talked about it can be kind of slow, but kind of really push through for the first 30 days that are really important to know.
Gosh, nobody wants to hear it, but it's all about the marketing and sales at that
Mm-hmm.
point. And
Yeah.
it's when you're starting out early, you have to do the hard part because you can't have referrals or you don't have any clients or anything to lean on. So it's
Yeah.
really about uh, doing whatever it takes. I heard I think you made some cold calls and stuff, right?
I
Did you do
did.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For Sandler. I'm not sure if you know specifically. It was Sandler 2 years ago, I think. A year. No, it
Yeah.
was last year during the pandemic. I made 1,000 cold
Yeah.
calls.
And it's the same thing. It's not fun the first time you get hung up on, stings a little bit, but the 100th time you get hung up on is pretty easy. And I think what I recommend is doing a little bit of everything rather than trying to go all in on one thing. So if you put all your eggs in one basket, it's pretty easy to fail. But if you
Yeah.
try cold calling those clients you want to work with and getting, in to have a conversation with them, if you try social media and liking their posts and commenting on their stuff and asking for a meeting, doing podcast interviews like this are a great way to ask people. Networking events, anything that's going on live that you can get in front of. um, Absolutely, I would say anything to get those first shots, and that includes doing free work. So especially with my entertainment career,
Mm-hmm.
you don't start out playing the Super Bowl, right? you
Yeah.
you play out you start out doing a free gig for a charity event or something and DJing that, and then somebody sees you there and they say, hey, you're great, how much do you charge to do a birthday party? And then you do a birthday party. And same thing on the radio is they don't start you out in like the morning drive, right? My
Yeah.
first show was midnight to 5:30 a.m. on Saturday,
Wow.
or Sunday morning rather, I guess. And then you get a slightly less crappy shift, and then you get your own show eventually. So I think just being willing to even work for free or work for very low pay just for experience and build your
Mm-hmm.
portfolio, no matter what it is. If you're an artist or anything, like if you can't give it away, you're not going to sell it for $10,000.
Yeah.
So, find the fans, find the people that like it, and get those repetitions in of practicing to start building that group of fans that will refer you or will buy from you when you need it.
Yeah, definitely. That makes a lot of sense. Definitely to me. There's definitely some times I've done stuff like for my dad. When I was way younger, I would do stuff for free, but now I'm kind of doing a little bit more. So it kind of builds up and then
Yeah.
on my own. So, what do you think are the most important beliefs when you go through those kind of hardships of doing things for like a lot cheaper than you'd like or free, or you're going through these people hanging up on you? What do you think are the most important belief systems to kind of stick through that?
A couple of things here. Number one for me is to realize that there's no right answer and
Mm-hmm.
that nobody has the answers. A lot of people waste too much time looking for like a silver bullet or the magic thing that works or the stuff that's easy and
Mm-hmm.
doesn't, have that emotional baggage attached to it. But really there's no quick
Yeah.
fixes. If there was, everybody else would know about it already and you would know about it, and then it doesn't work anymore because everybody else is taking the same shortcut. That just becomes the
Yeah.
way people do it. So really the only answer is to figure out what works for you and your personality. And so um, that is good news and bad news. There's no right answer, but there's also lots of right answers. So you just got to go find one, but you have to go through that scavenger hunt of looking for what works and trying a whole lot of things
Mm-hmm.
and not taking those things personally. So
Yeah.
that means, being resilient and keeping your focus on the long-term vision of where you want to go and then figuring that out along the way.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that is really important. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. What do you think are some really important skills? And obviously, we learn different skills and we learn different things, but kind of a general, kind of looking at like, okay, these are some skills that you should learn in the first 30 days that'll help you the most in those first 30 days.
Hmm, that's a good question because the skills change so much, and sometimes they go away, right? Like
Yeah.
3 or 4 years ago, we might have said Periscope or Vine was a good skill to have, and now it's not. It's
Yeah.
over on TikTok or something else. So, um, and I also think it depends on the career. So we've kind of been talking about um, some sort of broadcasting or content self-made kind of business, self-owned
Hmm.
career, entrepreneurial, freelancer, artists, graphic designers, things like that. But I would say it's completely different if you want to be an engineer or
Sure.
something else, right? So
Yeah.
to me, the skills don't matter as much as your willingness to figure it out. So maybe if I had to
Hmm.
pick a few skills, it would be like communication skills, because those
Yeah.
are important than anything. It
Hmm.
would be problem solving skills and creativity to keep going, and not to, you know, keep hitting the same thing, but figuring out resilience and learning how to fail is really big. Learning how to not
Yeah.
get stuck in that no matter what you're doing, because you're going to have setbacks throughout your career. Most people, you know, change jobs 3 to 5 times throughout their life, and they're going to have to start over, or you're going to have a win and a really high, and you're going to have some lows. And so figuring out how to keep yourself balanced and moving forward during that, I think would probably be my number one, is how to get your head right and your self-esteem right so that you can do your best at no matter what skill you're trying to perfect.
Yeah, definitely. Those are important skills, especially like it doesn't even have to be if you are your own like an entrepreneur. Even if you go through kind of just a normal job, you have to kind of deal with people telling you no. You have to deal with people being mean to you, kind of all these things and pushing through and being like, okay, I can, it's not a big deal. I can brush it off and
Yeah.
keep on going and I can still pushing through that. So yeah, that's important no matter what you do.
Being patient, I would add into that too. I know I was definitely impatient when I was a younger kid entering the workforce. I was, you know, thought I had great ideas and I knew everything and I wanted to be successful and I wanted it all to move a lot faster than it did. But I think being patient and enjoying the ride is so much more important, because good things
Yeah.
will come as long as you stick with it and as long as you get to keep doing what you love. That's the important part.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's really any magic bullets, but money and success and credibility, all of that stuff just is something that builds over time. And there's really not, I don't think, any way to speed it up other than to continue to work.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely persistence and patience is what I learned. Like patience and persistence, they kind of go hand in hand. Being willing to
Yeah.
wait through it and push through those things. It's really hard. It's a lot easier said than done, especially in the
Hmm.
moment. You're like, oh yeah, I can definitely push through. I can definitely be patient. But then when you have to do it, you're like, can I do something else?
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you listen to a whole lot of people's stories, I like to listen to podcasts too. And when you listen to somebody like a Dax Shepard, who's a famous movie star and
Hmm.
TV star
Yeah.
now and has a massively huge podcast, he auditioned for 10 years of failing without getting
Wow.
anything anybody seen. And I forget, somewhere between 7 and 10 years, where he was doing improv comedy and he was not making really any money, you know, and you got roommates and you're trying to save on food and you're not taking vacations and things. But if somebody told you you had to do that for 10 years and you would be a millionaire and you know, uh,
Yeah.
have a life, the family you love, the house you love, and get to work anywhere you want, or have a podcast with 1 million followers, whatever your thing is, would you do that for 10 years? Would you be willing to pay that price? And I think that's what it is, no matter what it is. If you want to have your own
Definitely.
insurance business or you want to have your own, um, you know, coffee shop or
Yeah.
something, it might take 10 years of struggling to figure it out and finding your audience and the way to make it work. But that's a small price to pay in the long scheme.
Yeah,
If
definitely.
you can pay that, it
Mhm.
pays off.
Yeah, definitely. I had no idea he spent so long doing auditioning. I watched a little bit of, he had like that really long show, I think on ABC, Parenthood, which was like
Oh yeah,
six
yeah,
seasons.
right.
It's like critically
Yeah.
acclaimed and everything. And I think he's from Michigan, which is why I remember him
He
so
is from
well.
Detroit. Yeah.
Yeah, so I always remember those because there's only like five of us.
Yeah, but there's also a whole lot, basically anybody that's famous. Like the Beatles played together as a band for a long time before
Yeah.
they became famous and had a hit record. They had to go to Germany and stuff, and they weren't even playing in the UK or the US for a while. And so I think that's what people miss. We see the successes and we think like, oh, Amazon blew up and was a huge success, but Jeff
Mm-hmm.
Bezos was working really hard in his garage,
Yeah.
to make Amazon work and to sell any amount of books for years before that really took off. So
Yeah.
you just got to figure out how to make it through that
Yeah,
first dip,
definitely.
which is hard.
Yeah, of course, that's going to be hard for anyone, but knowing that there are definitely plenty of people, millions of people who have done it before you, so you can do it. You can kind of push through those really hard years and really hard times.
And I want to add one more thing there too, which is it can also be a whole lot of fun. That was some of the most fun
Yeah.
in my life and my career is we were so broke our power got shut off one night and our friends we threw a party and we had candle lit party with no power and beer and coolers with ice and we had a lot of fun and paid the power bill the next day and eventually got it back on. But um, those times are fun and special times and you don't have anything to lose, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's what I think is cool is you can take a ton of risks and you can have a lot of fun and you don't have the responsibilities and pressures of having anything, to lose.
Yeah, well, that's a great way to spin it. Definitely, there's always a positive outcome. And I've talked to so many people, and of course, nothing to them, but I've talked to a lot of people, and they're like, oh, yeah, it's so hard. But yeah, a positive spin on everything, I think, can make a world's difference in the long run, too.
Yeah, and I know my friends and I would hang out after work and make work on special projects or make funny videos or audio for the radio station and parody songs and all kinds of stuff that was just fun. It was us learning the tools, we were playing around and we were learning how to get good, which is fun, but
Hmm.
we didn't have children or responsibilities or wives or worrying about having to pay for the vacation or rent. We were all
Yeah.
just able to have that freedom to go for it and to try some things and fail. So
Yeah,
I,
that's
I highly
awesome.
recommend that. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. That's so cool. My last question before we kind of wrap this up is what do you think that if, again, kind of going back, turning the time, knowing what you know now, what do you think your calendar would look like in the first 8 days? Either it's a day to day, like very strict schedule, or maybe, hey, I'm going to do something this week and then this week and kind of something like that. What do you think that you'd do?
Well, I've spent a lot of time working on this one too, believe it or not. And I became like a time management junkie for a while and got into optimizing my schedule and planning out every 15 minutes and all kinds of stuff. And here's what I've learned over the last 20 years. Energy management is way more important than time management,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're going to own your own business, be an entrepreneur, or have some sort of freelance career, or even you're just working remotely now because of the pandemic, or that's the way people work and you're working from home. It's more important to me to do things when I have the right energy. So I can't sit behind a computer for 8 hours straight without getting burned out and eye fatigue and energy drops, and I just don't do my best work. And the same thing goes for performance stuff that I do. I can't be on stage for 8 hours either without
Yeah.
completely draining my energy and getting tired and my feet ache and I'm exhausted and I'm not as creative anymore. You just
Mm-hmm.
can't maintain that. So what I
Definitely.
found is thinking about cycles throughout your day and figuring out when are you the most creative, when are you the most outgoing, when are you the most detail oriented and focused, making time for meditation and resetting stuff so you don't just carry stress for like 12 hours either. If you take some breaks to play or go outside for a walk or do a quick meditation, all of that stuff helps you reset
Yeah.
and transition to another cycle of work. And so it kind of depends on what you're doing, but I would say figuring out how to exercise, when to eat and what to eat to give you the most amount of energy,
Mm-hmm.
how long you can work before you need a break, and then how long you want to play every day to recover and rebuild your energy. And then make sure you get a ton of sleep, because studies have proven if you work more than 40 hours a week consistently, you end up producing less than if you had just worked the 40 hours. And same thing with sleep. People that talk about launching businesses and pulling all-nighters and stuff like that, it works for a short-term deadline. But if you do that any longer than 6 weeks, you end up working so much slower than if you had
Yeah.
just worked a normal hour, and it's not sustainable. So I think
Mm-hmm.
just for everybody's health and happiness, figure out how to get rested, recover, exercise, and then push yourself, but then be able to pull back as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Well, that's a great way to put it. Energy management, knowing kind of what puts you in I guess, to renew your energy throughout the day, because you're right that I'm definitely a very hyperactive person. I'm a very fidgety person. So I cannot be at a desk for like more than a few hours. I always get up and I like walk around the house, even though I have nothing to look for, I have nothing to do. I
Right.
just walk around because I'm like, I cannot sit for another minute. I'm going to go insane.
Yeah, and set whatever reminders and things you need to. So I generally turn off all reminders and beeps
Mm-hmm.
and stuff, just to not distract me from focused work. Or if I'm recording, I don't have
Yeah.
to worry about my phone going off or my
Yeah.
computer beeping at me and distracting me. But I do have some strategic alarms to remind
Yeah.
myself to stand up, walk, or set appointments for lunch, or even to go to bed and say, hey, around 8 o'clock, I need to stop doing whatever I'm doing and start winding down and start reading and preparing myself to go to bed, or do whatever focus things and final tasks I need to prepare myself for the next day. Just makes things a lot
Yeah,
easier.
definitely. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today. And you shared so many amazing tips and a lot of valuable information. So I really appreciate you taking the time. And I just learned a lot. And it was such a pleasure to talk to you and learn from you.
Well, thanks for asking and for listening to all of that. And best of luck to you and your career. I think you'll do
Yeah.
great.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for saying that. It means a lot. Of course. Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you.